The fire that can't be fed, what separates the dark elite from the spiritually gifted. There is a level of power so concentrated, so unshakable, that even darkness hesitates to approach it. Not because this power is loud or violent, but because it is utterly still. It is the kind of presence that doesn't flinch at suffering, doesn't beg for light, and never seeks approval. These are the elite 1% of the dark chosen ones, the ones even demons fear to touch. And what's most terrifying about them isn't what they can do. It's what they've become.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound spiritual lessons.
We talk so much about awakening, about light, about healing, but we rarely speak of the ones who descended so completely into the abyss that they became immune to it. The ones who've sat with every fear, every shame, every ancestral wound, and didn't ask to be saved. They didn't cry out for angels. They didn't look for guides. They became the still point in the center of the storm. And that stillness is what darkness fears the most. You see, demons don't fear light. They've seen light. They know how to manipulate it. They know how to seduce those who think they're special just because they've had a vision or heard a voice in meditation. But when they meet one of the elites, someone who no longer needs visions, who no longer reacts to praise, who no longer fears death or failure, there's nothing to feed on. No weakness to provoke, no ego to seduce. That's why the elite are untouchable. Not because they're perfect, but because they're empty of illusion. They've burned every mask. They've buried every lie. And they walk the earth not to be worshipped, but to witness. I remember a moment during a 21-day isolation fast in the high desert. No food, no contact, just wind, heat, and endless silence. On the 7th night, I felt it, an ancient presence, not evil, not dramatic, just hungry. It circled my tent like a thought waiting to be believed. It whispered every fear I had ever carried. It offered visions of power, influence, adoration. All I had to do was bend slightly. Just agree that I was special. Just agree that I deserved more. Just agree that my pain was proof of entitlement. But I didn't move. I didn't argue. I didn't defend. I just sat. And the energy left, because there was nothing for it to hold on to. That's when I understood true power is not in resisting darkness. It's in becoming the one who no longer needs to resist. So what makes someone part of this elite 1%? It's not talent. It's not knowledge. It's not charisma. It's not even how much trauma they've survived. It's how little they carry. These beings have gone through betrayal, abandonment, spiritual crucifixion, and instead of clinging to the wound, they let it carve them open. Instead of making their pain a brand, they let it dissolve their identity completely. They don't teach from scars. They teach from silence. They don't perform truth. They are truth. And that frequency, it's not something you can fake. It's not something you can market. It's not something you can intellectualize. It's something you become when you've lost everything. And yet, somehow, you're still here, breathing, knowing, watching. And here's the terrifying part for many of you watching this. Most of you feel that this is who you're meant to become. You've always sensed it, always felt the weight of it. You've never fully fit in, even with other awakened people. You've always felt like you were holding something back, something ancient, something dangerous. And here's the truth: you are. But the reason it hasn't fully awakened yet isn't because you haven't meditated enough. It's because you're still attached. Attached to being good, attached to being right, attached to being seen as holy, as deep, as chosen. The elite 1% don't care about any of that. They've already died to it. That's why their power flows like a quiet storm. So I ask you, what part of you still wants to be seen as powerful? What part of you still wants to be known as spiritual, as awakened, as rare? That's the part that demons feed on. That's the part that makes you vulnerable. Because as long as you need to be seen, you can still be shaken. The elite 1% of dark chosen ones don't walk around announcing themselves. They don't wear their power like a costume. They wear it like skin, natural, invisible, unspoken. They don't argue. They don't explain. They don't defend their path, because they've already walked through every hell that could question it. And here's the craziest part: once you reach this level, you don't even care that you've reached it. That's how you know you're there. You don't want to be elite. You don't need to be feared. You don't even need to be remembered. You simply are, and that is enough. But to reach this level, you must pass through the gate of annihilation. Not physical death, but spiritual disintegration. You must lose everything you think makes you worthy. You must let go of every identity, even the sacred ones. You must release even your desire to be awakened. Because only in that total surrender does the deeper current of your power reveal itself, not as something you control, but as something that moves through you. So now I ask you the first real question of your life. Would you still walk this path if no one ever knew you did? If no one ever saw your light? If the world never gave you recognition, fame, validation, or acknowledgement, would you still walk it? Because the elite 1% don't walk for others. They don't walk for applause. They walk because the path is who they are. And if you're still watching this, if your heart hasn't turned away, if your mind hasn't dismissed this as too intense, too much, too dark, then maybe you're already one of them. You just haven't surrendered far enough to see it. But that's what we're going to do next. We're going to go deeper than anyone dares to go. We're going to strip away every last illusion that keeps you from becoming the one even demons fear to touch. Are you ready? The Bloodless Throne: how the elite wield power without ever needing to use it. There's a kind of authority that doesn't need to raise its voice. A power so ancient, it's not spoken, it's felt. When one of the elite 1% of dark chosen ones walks into a space, they don't dominate the room with charisma. They don't posture or perform. They simply exist, and the space shifts. The air becomes heavier. Time slows. People unconsciously lower their voices, or avoid eye contact, not out of fear, but out of respect for something they can't name. That is the bloodless throne. A throne that isn't earned by battle or brilliance, but by emptiness, total inner stillness, total detachment, and total mastery over the self. The elite don't need to use power. Their power is presence. You have to understand something that most people will never even glimpse. True power does not react. It does not prove itself. It does not announce its arrival. Why? Because it has nothing to lose, nothing to defend, nothing to prove. The elite have gone beyond the battlefield. While others are still swinging swords for validation, they've already transcended the war. They don't fight because there's nothing left inside of them that needs to win. And that's why darkness doesn't approach them. Because power that doesn't react cannot be provoked. And demons energetic, emotional, even ancestral live off reaction. They feed on your need to be seen as right, your need to defend your identity, your need to be respected. But what happens when there's no need left? When you've died to all of it? That's when you ascend to the bloodless throne. I want you to consider something radical. Maybe the strongest ones aren't the loudest. Maybe the ones who don't post, don't preach, don't perform, maybe they're the ones who already won. Because they're not trying to be understood. They're not trying to be followed. They're not even trying to teach. They're just being. And in that state, they bend reality in ways no one sees. They heal people without touching them. They end arguments without speaking. They shift timelines with a glance. They don't need rituals. They are the ritual. They don't need to prove presence. They've become the field in which presence arises. So how did they get there? They lost everything. Not physically, but internally. They lost the need to be liked, to be loved, to be known. They lost the need to be safe, the need to be admired, the need to be right. They walked through betrayal and didn't build bitterness. They walked through isolation and didn't build walls. They walked through spiritual awakening and didn't build an identity around it. They became nothing, and in that nothingness they found the throne. Not a throne made of gold, but a seat in the void. A place inside where no emotion controls you, no thought owns you, no desire drives you. You're still human, you still feel, but nothing moves you unless you choose to be moved. Think about that. How many of your thoughts today were actually your choice? How many of your reactions were really conscious? Or were you just responding to old programming, to invisible wounds, to unconscious fears? The elite 1% don't live like that. They don't react. They respond. And often they don't respond at all. Because they know not every battle is worthy of your breath. Not every question deserves an answer. Not every insult deserves a defense. Why? Because when you sit on the bloodless throne, you don't serve ego. You serve truth. And truth doesn't chase. It doesn't plead. It doesn't dance for attention. It simply is. That's true spiritual royalty. And here's what no one tells you. When you reach that level, people will test you even more. They'll try to provoke you. They'll project onto you. They'll misunderstand your silence, your boundaries, your detachment. They'll say you're cold, distant, unbothered. And this is where the rare ego tries to sneak in again. Show them who you really are. Prove your depth. Explain your silence. But you don't. You don't owe anyone access to your energy. You don't owe anyone your frequency. You don't owe anyone your light. You give it when you choose, not when they demand. And that's what makes the elite dangerous in the most sacred way. Because they've become sovereign, not just in their energy, but in their attention. They don't chase, they don't cling, and they don't compromise their frequency to maintain connection. They don't get pulled into the chaos of others. They don't take on the emotional debts of the broken. They've learned the final lesson: you can love without rescuing, guide without controlling, and serve without sacrificing your soul. So here's the question: are you willing to be misunderstood in order to remain whole? Are you willing to be seen as too much or too distant or too intense so that you don't have to dilute your power just to be accepted? Because the throne is not for those who want to be liked. It's for those who want to be free. Freedom doesn't come from being worshipped. It comes from not needing worship. Freedom doesn't come from controlling outcomes. It comes from trusting alignment. And the elite 1% have mastered that. They are unmoved by temptation because they have nothing left to prove. They are unmoved by fear because they've already died the necessary deaths. They are unmoved by praise because they know praise is just another chain if you need it. They are still, not because they are passive, but because they are prepared. They are silent, not because they are afraid, but because they are listening. They are powerful, not because they dominate, but because they don't need to. So now I ask you, what would happen if you gave up every need to be understood, validated, seen, or saved? What would happen if you stopped trying to earn your place and simply claimed it? What would happen if you stopped reacting and started choosing? Would you find your throne? Because it's already there, waiting. Not in the sky, not in the temple, not in your next download or breakthrough or spiritual upgrade. It's in the stillness you've been avoiding, the silence you keep filling, the void you keep running from. That's where the throne is. The forbidden silence, entering the void where only the elite can survive. There is a silence so intense, so pure, so absolute that it doesn't bring peace, it brings obliteration. Most people think silence is calming, a break from noise, a place to rest. But the elite 1% of dark chosen ones know the secret. True silence is where everything you thought you were gets dismantled. It's not a pause, it's a portal. And when you step into it without distraction, without identity, without expectation, something terrifying and divine begins to happen. You start to disappear. Not physically, not emotionally, but spiritually. Your story, your pain, your pride, your wounds, your wisdom, it all begins to dissolve. And what's left is not emptiness. It's presence. Pure, unfiltered, unbranded consciousness. Most people can't survive in that space for long. They reach for a thought. They reach for a mantra. They reach for a memory, a title, a name. But the elite stay. They sit in the void and let it devour them. Because they know this silence isn't death. It's rebirth. I've sat in that silence, not for minutes, not for hours, but for days. No light, no sound, no food, no voice, just breath and pulse and the infinite weight of selflessness. And in that stillness, I met everything I was afraid to face. The fear of being forgotten, the fear of being misunderstood, the fear of becoming nothing. And then I did become nothing. And it was the most powerful moment of my life. Because in that nothingness, I found the source of everything. The forbidden silence is forbidden not because it's locked away, but because it terrifies the mind. The ego cannot live there. Even the rare ego, the sacred ego, the spiritual ego, the awakened identity gets destroyed in that space. Because the void doesn't care how many visions you've had. It doesn't care how many followers you have. It doesn't care how much you've healed. It doesn't even care if you're chosen. It only asks one thing: can you be still enough to vanish? That is the final test. Because what rises from that vanishing is not a better version of you. It's a non-version, a frequency, a presence, a force that no longer belongs to the personal. It belongs to the field. And once you become that, you carry a kind of power that doesn't come from effort. It comes from being a pure conduit. You don't speak from knowledge. You speak from truth. You don't act from will. You act from alignment. You don't move energy. Energy moves you. And this is what the demons fear. Not your light, not your rituals, not your protection spells. They fear the ones who've gone silent, who've gone still, who've gone empty. Because emptiness is untouchable. It can't be tempted. It can't be manipulated. It can't be provoked. It doesn't react. It watches. It witnesses. It contains. That's what the 1% of the dark chosen ones become, containers for the ineffable, embodiments of that which has no name, no face, no form, but bends reality at will. But let's be honest, this isn't the path most people want. Most want power they can control. Most want awakening that makes them feel special. Most want to be spiritual without having to die. And that's okay. That's their path. But you're still watching. Which tells me something. It tells me you've already heard the silence calling. You've already tasted the void. You've already felt that strange pull towards something you can't explain. A kind of ancient remembering. A kind of sacred aloneness. Don't run from it. Because that silence, that void, it's not the end of you. It's the beginning of what you really are. And when you go deep enough into it, you find the last doorway, beyond identity, beyond story, beyond even the concept of being elite or chosen. You find a presence so vast, so still, so radiant it doesn't need a name. It doesn't need a mission. It doesn't need to be feared. It just is. And from that being, everything else aligns. This is where leadership begins, not from ambition, but from resonance. This is where healing begins, not from knowledge, but from frequency. This is where true power begins, not from doing, but from disappearing. And so I ask you, one final time, can you let yourself vanish? Can you let go of everything, even the sacred parts of you? Can you let go of being seen as wise, as deep, as rare, as powerful, and simply become the silence itself? Because that's where the throne truly is. Not in the temple, not in the teachings, not in the titles, but in the void that remains when all of it is gone. If you can sit there, if you can breathe there, if you can love there, then you are already one of the one dot, not because you've earned it, but because you've emptied enough to receive it. And now the path is clear. No more striving, no more proving, no more performing. Just silence, just presence, just truth. The demons won't touch you. Not because you're too strong, but because you're too still. Welcome to the throne no one sees. Welcome to the power that needs no name. Welcome to the silence that speaks through you. You're already there.